Greetings my friends, and welcome back to today's video. The Mandalorians and Jedi have been at odds with one another for almost several thousand years. When the Mandalorians sided with the Sith during the New Sith Wars, and then went to war with the Republic in the subsequent Mandalorian Wars, bad blood permeated between both the Mandalorians and the Jedi. However, there were very few special times in galactic history when their cultures would cross over into one another through Mandalorians making camaraderie with Jedi, such as in the case of Ahsoka and Luke Skywalker with Din Djarin and the other Mandos. But the kind of culture crossovers we are speaking of is when a member of one of these groups becomes the other. The only case we have herefor to draw from is the Mandalorian turned Jedi Tar Vizsla, the inventor of the famous Darksaber. But what if I told you that there was a Jedi who left the Order and became a Mandalorian? Yes, my friends, today we have a special story for you all. The story of a man named Bardan Jusk. Before we get into today's story, if you enjoy character dives such as these and want to continue seeing daily Star Wars lore, be sure to force crush that subscribe button. Now, let us begin with our tale. Our story today comes from the Republic Commandos novels. Bardan Jusk began his life as a Jedi during the Republic class era, which was the short time between the High Republic era and the Clone Wars. Bardan became a Jedi Knight and served as a commander in the Clone Wars. Bardan, though, was one of the Jedi that had been reserved about fighting within the Clone Wars itself, and didn't actually want to. He was unsettled by the fact that all of the clones looked alike, and the very first time he had a mission with them, his mind was settled. Eventually, he found that he really enjoyed the clones' company though, and made great friends with the ARC trooper known as Ordo. Over time, he was very unhappy with the treatment of the clones, and disliked how they were treated and manufactured as property, something he brought before the Jedi Council in this passage with great concern. So how do we justify what we are doing? Breeding men without choice and without freedom to fight and die for us. When did the means cease to justify the end? Where is our society heading? Where are our ideals, and what are we without them? If we give in to expedience in this way, where do we draw the line between ourselves and those who we find unacceptably evil? I have no answers, masters. Do you? As you can tell, Bardan was also one of the Jedi that could see through the corruption of the Republic, and saw the road that they were heading down because of the Clone War. The Jedi Knight cared a great deal about the true Jedi philosophy and protecting innocent lives, rather than becoming full-out soldiers. Later, because of Bardan's friendship with ARC Trooper Ordo, it caught the notice of a Mandalorian named Kal Skirata, who happened to be the one who actually trained the clone commandos. Kal selected Bardan for an important mission along with Omega Squad, Delta Squad, and another Jedi. Throughout the course of the operation, Bardan grew steadily closer to the clones as well as the Mandalorian. They became so close that Bardan began to refer to Skirata as Vadika, which was an affectionate form for the Mandalorian word of little brother, and Skirata often called him Bardika, which was Mando for little Bardan, expressing fatherly affection for him. By the end of their mission, he had been accepted into the fold as a fully fledged Mandalorian warrior, even donning borrowed Mandalorian armor from Kal for the final battle with the terrorists. Jedi Master Bardan fought the terrorists valiantly, and he and his comrades ultimately won the day. Following the battle, he knew that his affinity for the Mandalorian culture would be viewed by the Jedi Council as attachment, but he did not see it in the same way that they would. He decided that if he were to ask to choose between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, he would choose to be a Mando. This decision would come for him sooner than he expected, as he began to confront increasing amounts of evidence that the Grand Army of the Republic were executing their own clones, much like how we saw them almost do during the first mission of Umbara. Now, completely disillusioned with the Jedi Council as well as the Republic, Bardan went to his master and declared that he would continue to uphold the true Jedi values, protecting innocence. But by doing this, he resigned himself as a Jedi, stating that he couldn't betray his men to death. His master ultimately understood, and even allowed him to keep his lightsaber. Bardan donned Mandalorian armor and joined Clan Skirata, officially changing his name to Bardan Skirata. Bardan would go on to survive Order 66, and he went into hiding during the time of the Galactic Civil War, but still maintained his life and his connections to the Mandalorians, having many adventures and exploits following the war. But my friends, what did you think of this? Did you ever think that a Jedi would be allowed into the Mandalorian culture like this? This novel, so far as we know, is still Legends. However, I do find it interesting that the Mandalorians are willing to accept anyone into their folds and families whenever their ideas align and their true bond is formed between them. Bardan decided that he was stronger when his attachments were formed, and used that to transition into a life of a Mandalorian, rather than that of a Jedi. It's quite famous that we know of Tarvisla, who of course was a Mandalorian that became a Jedi, but we believe it's equally as rare for a Jedi to decide to become a Mandalorian, giving into the way of attachments and ultimately not being okay with the treatment of the clone troopers, becoming so disillusioned with the Council and the wider Jedi Order that they give up their cause in life entirely and accept a brand new one. This is why Bardan began his life as a Jedi, but the Clone Wars ultimately broke his spirit, but it was again reforged by the Mandalorian. As for the end of Bardan's story, it is unknown, but it is believed that he survived well into the era of Luke Skywalker potentially, and the reasoning for this is perhaps his master did him a major favor and deleted him from the Jedi archives, which I speculate that he may have, and I believe that this is a major reason why he was allowed to continue past the era of Order 66 and the reign of the Empire, simply because of the fact that he did possess a lightsaber and was Force sensitive, but identified as a Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian people likely protected him as a result. I think the story of this Jedi Knight is actually quite powerful, and shows us that he realized just how evil the Jedi were becoming, and yet decided to resign himself to a fate that he believed in, and to believe in a brand new culture with attachments which he believed actually made him more powerful. As he grew farther and farther away with the Jedi, he turned to the Mandalorians for brotherhood and respect, as in many ways, the Mandalorian people value brotherhood far more than the Jedi do, and value their attachments and the creed above all else, which is likely why the Jedi and the Mandalorians come into great conflict with one another, in what has made them ancient enemies and now powerful allies. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on these videos and our deeper dives into some of the Legends lore revolving around the Mandalorians, the ancient Sith, and more? And would you like to see more character stories and analysis in the future? And if you enjoyed this video, it would help us out if you could like it. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching and continuing to support the channel. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.